I rented a cabin in the woods last December after my breakup. I thought it would help me find peace and focus on my freelance graphic design work. At first, it felt like a good idea. The cabin was surrounded by thick pine trees, and everything smelled like wood smoke. It made everything so quiet, or so I thought. On the first night, I was unpacking my things when I heard a faint scratching sound outside. At first, I shrugged it off. It was probably a raccoon or something like that. The snow was falling heavily, and it muffled everything around me. Yet, that scratching sent a shiver down my spine. I checked the windows. Nothing. Just trees and darkness. As the days went by, the scratching never stopped. It became a constant sound in the background. No matter how much I wanted to ignore it, I couldn't. I peeked out a few times, convinced that I was imagining things. The sound blended with the wind, and I felt like something was out there, watching me. Then, on the third night, the noises changed. I heard low murmurs from the woods. It felt like someone was having a conversation just beyond my earshot. I was sure I couldn't make out words, but it felt heavy, like they were pressing against me. My heart raced. I thought about checking it out, but a heavy feeling told me to stay inside. Instead, I tried to work on my laptop, but the whispers only grew louder. I barely slept. The sounds continued: footsteps, soft and shifting outside. I remember glancing out the window, heart pounding, but the darkness swallowed everything. By morning, I found odd markings around the cabin. They looked like deep scratches in the wood. When I examined the snow outside, I noticed strange footprints. They weren't animal tracks. I didn't recognize them at all. Packing my bags to leave, anxiety gnawed at me. I kept thinking about what was out there. I didn't tell anyone when I returned home. They'd just assume I was overreacting because I was alone. I wondered if it was really something in the woods or if it was just me imagining things. At night now, I still hear the scratching and murmurs when I close my eyes. Just as I was about to step out of the cabin, I heard another sound. It was closer this time, a whisper that seemed to say, "Come play with us." I froze. Nobody was there. I could feel the hairs on my arms standing tall. I took one last look around but only saw dark trees. I took a deep breath and stepped out, feeling like I was leaving a nightmare behind. But since I've been back home, I can't shake it off. Sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I swear I still hear those whispers. The scratching always finds me. And I find myself left wondering if I truly escaped that cabin or if something simply followed me back. I tried to go back to my normal life after returning home. I thought that if I kept busy, the memories of that cabin would fade. I threw myself into work, but every time I closed my laptop, the silence squeezed at me. Sometimes, I could swear I caught a glimpse of movement from the corner of my eye, or that a shadow lingered just beyond my front porch. Weeks passed, and it became routine. Work during the day, restless nights. I convinced myself it was just stress from the breakup and that the cabin was just a memory, a blip in time. But then one evening, I received an unexpected message. It was from the owner of the cabin. "Hi. Hope you enjoyed your stay. Just checking in, did you notice anything strange while you were there?" I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. Did he know? Did others experience the same things? I hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I finally responded, "Nothing strange, just the sounds of nature." I didn't want to sound paranoid. The next day, I got another message. "Glad to hear it. I just wanted to mention, please don't go into the woods after dark. Some visitors have shared experiences. It's not just wildlife." My heart raced. What did he mean? I skimmed the message again, searching for clues. Experiences. Plural. I felt like I was being pulled into a bigger mystery, one that was dark and vast. I decided I had to know more. I searched online for the cabin and its history. After some digging, I stumbled across a local forum dedicated to strange occurrences near the woods. People shared stories of lost hikers, things they saw moving in the trees, and incidents of voices imitating loved ones. The stories chilled me to my core. But even as I read them, a part of me felt drawn to the cabin again. Maybe it was never about needing peace, it was about finding answers. I sent a message to the owner, asking if I could come back. I needed to see those woods again, needed to understand what haunted me. He agreed, and I found myself driving back with conflicting emotions. Anxiety seeped alongside excitement. When I parked in front of the cabin, the familiar deep breath of wood smoke filled my lungs. Everything looked the same, except for the heavy cloud cover above. That night, I prepared myself. I had a flashlight, and I was determined to walk into the woods. I told myself I would only go a few feet in, just enough to understand. Just enough to find out if what I heard was real or just my mind playing tricks. I stepped outside, the ground crunching beneath my feet. The air felt thicker, almost electric. As I moved deeper into the woods, I held my flashlight ahead. The beam sliced through the darkness, but shadows danced around me like they were alive. I felt like something was waiting. Then, I heard it, a whisper, soft and clear. "You came back." My breath caught in my throat. It was the same voice. Panic surged through me. I turned, desperate to find my way back, but the trees seemed to close in. In my haste, I stumbled on unseen roots. That's when I saw it, movement in the darkness, and then a figure flickered behind a tree before vanishing. I froze, torn between wanting to flee and the need to know. But I didn't want to play anymore. I was about to run when I caught a glint on the ground, a small pendant, one I recognized. It was the same kind my ex wore. My heart raced, knowing I needed to get out. But just as I turned to leave, something brushed against my shoulder. I whipped around, and that's when everything went dark. When my eyes opened again, I was lying on the forest floor. The flashlight had rolled away, its beam flickering faintly before surrendering to the darkness. I sat up, disoriented, a pulse of fear thrumming beneath my skin. My breath came quick, moving in and out like I had just run a marathon. The whisper was gone. The air felt heavy and still, as if the woods were holding their breath. I could barely see more than a few feet ahead. I reached for the flashlight, my fingers trembling as I groped through the underbrush. It seemed lost, swallowed by the night. That's when I felt it again, a presence behind me. Not a whisper or a sound, but a shift in the atmosphere. Chills washed over me, and I turned slowly, half expecting to see the figure from before. Nothing. Just trees standing silent, ancient sentinels in the dark. I pushed myself up, brushing dirt off my pants. I needed to find my way back to the cabin. I took a step, then another, and for every step I took, shadows felt like they were tugging at me, urging me back. Panic clawed at my insides. "Just breathe," I muttered to myself. The cabin was my lifeline, and I needed to find it. I turned around, focusing on my surroundings, and made my way back, instinct guiding my path now more than reason. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed nearby. A twig? I froze again. Heart pounding, I listened carefully. Footsteps. Someone was out there. I strained my ears, but the sound faded quickly, like a ghost retreating into the night. I pushed forward, the urge to flee overtaking me. Soon, I spied a glow nearby. The cabin. Relief flooded me as I rushed for the light. When I reached the door, I shouldered it open and tumbled inside, slamming it shut behind me. I leaned against the door, trying to catch my breath. The familiar scent of the cabin filled my lungs, but it offered no comfort. I stood in the dark, the only light coming from the window. The clouds moved outside, blocking and revealing the moon in a dance that felt eerily deliberate. I pulled my phone from my pocket, wanting the safety of modernity. But there was no signal. Just as well, I wouldn't call anyone, I couldn't explain this. I sank onto the couch, staring at the little lamp on the table. I needed a distraction, something to ground me. That's when I remembered the pendant, the sudden glint that attracted my attention earlier. I reached into my pocket, my fingers brushing against something cold and metallic. I pulled out the pendant, and chills raced down my spine. As I turned it over in my hand, I noticed something etched on the back, a name. I felt my stomach twist. The name was not my ex's. It was someone else's, a name I recognized from the forum. It belonged to one of the hikers who had gone missing a few years back. Suddenly, the stories from the internet took on new weight, and my sense of safety shattered. A noise outside captured my attention, a low thud, then silence. My heart raced again as I remembered the warning, it wasn't just wildlife. I stood up, unsure whether to hide or check. The choice felt impossible. With a deep breath, I edged toward the window, trembling hands clutching the pendant tightly. I was about to raise the curtain when another thud came from the back of the cabin. Someone or something was there. I didn't know if I could face whatever came next. All I knew was I needed answers, or a way out. I edged closer to the window, bracing myself for whatever I might see. My heartbeat was loud in my ears, drowning out all other sounds. The pendant felt heavier in my palm, a cold anchor tethering me to the reality I was trying so hard to escape. Cautiously, I raised the curtain just enough to peek outside. The moon had broken through the clouds, illuminating the area around the cabin. I scanned the darkness, searching for movement. Then I saw a shadow slipping between the trees, too fluid to be human. Instinct screamed at me to duck behind the furniture, but I resisted the urge. I needed to know what I was up against. The shadow passed, merging into the deeper darkness of the woods. The noise from the back of the cabin came again, a deliberate thud, followed by a soft shuffling. My breath caught. Should I call out? Or should I hide? Both options seemed foolish and fraught with danger. I glanced back at the door, but it felt flimsy, a weak barrier against whatever had lurking outside. I remembered the stories, the missing people, the legends whispered among campers. Something instinctual told me this was not just a story anymore. I had stumbled into something I didn't understand, and I was too far gone to turn back. I turned to the wooden closet in the corner. If I could get anything useful, maybe that would help me feel more secure. I crept towards it, my footsteps muffled by the carpet. The door creaked as I slowly pulled it open, revealing a jumble of old board games and winter gear. In the back, however, something caught my eye, a hunting knife, its blade gleaming dully. I grabbed it. Holding it gave me a sense of control, a tiny flicker of courage to face the unknown. But I was still very much aware that I was out of my depth. Another thud sounded, louder this time, shaking the walls of the cabin. I froze, heart racing as I caught a glimpse of movement from the corner of my eye. Someone was on the porch now, shifting just outside the door. My pulse quickened as I took a step back, adrenaline coursing through me. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice betraying a tremor I couldn't completely suppress. My gut clenched, expecting silence or worse, a response. There was a moment of stillness, a breath held tight in the air. Then, almost cautiously, a deep voice responded, "Help me." It was a plea, muffled and choked, cutting through the tension like a knife. My heart sank. I didn't recognize the voice, and the instinct to flee surged again, but fear mixed with curiosity held me in place. "Help?" I echoed, unsure whether to believe what I was hearing. I took a step closer to the door, the knife gripping tightly in my hand. "Please. I can't stay out here." That desperation in the voice made my stomach twist. As frightened as I was, I couldn't leave someone out there if they truly needed help. But the stories. I was torn between compassion and caution, between the very real fear coursing through me and the haunting echoes of what might lurk in the dark. I hesitated, but only for a moment. "Okay," I said, voice steadying. "Just hold on." I'll open the door. Then everything went dark. I blinked, disoriented. The cabin was plunged into darkness. My heart raced, pounding against my ribcage like a frantic drum. The silence was thick, as if the world outside had stopped moving. I couldn't see anything. I fumbled for the flashlight I had tossed onto the sofa earlier. I gripped it tight, fingers trembling. With a click, a beam of light cut through the darkness, illuminating the room in harsh white. The shadows danced around me. "Hello?" I called, a small tremor lingering in my voice. "Are you still out there?" The doorway stood still, and my question hung heavily in the air. No reply came, only the rustle of the wind through the trees outside. Was it a trick? A ruse? I couldn't shake the creeping sensation that I had made a terrible mistake. What if this was something, or someone, far worse than my fears? I hesitated again, running a hand through my hair. Just a moment ago, I was ready to help, but now I was questioning everything. Gathering courage, I stepped back toward the door and aimed the flashlight at the doorknob. As I reached for the handle, I felt an oddly cold draft sweep through the cabin. It was as if the air had thickened. I froze. The stories swirled in my mind, the voices of those who had vanished, the legends of spirits that roamed the woods. Was the night turning against me? With a deep breath, I turned the doorknob slowly, twisting it just enough for a sliver of light to spill onto the porch. I pulled the door open but kept the chain in place. The night air rushed in, crisp against my face. "Are you there?" I peered into the darkness, eyes straining to pick out any sign of life. The only thing I could see were the outlines of the trees, swaying gently in the night. Then, before I could fully process it, the chain released with a soft click. The door pushed open a little wider, just enough for a tall, shadowy figure to stumble into the light, panting and wild-eyed. It was a man, covered in dirt and leaves, his clothes torn and stained. A chill shot down my spine as I recognized the panic in his gaze. "Please, let me in," he gasped, hands trembling. I wanted to scream. I wanted to slam the door and hide, but something held me there. I glanced back at the hunting knife resting on the living room table, a reminder of my puny defenses. "Who are you?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice strong. "I swear, I'm not here to hurt you," he said, his breath hitching. I need shelter." Behind him, a rustle echoed from the woods, loud and heavy. My skin prickled with alarm. I noticed the shadows around him shifting, the underbrush moving as though something else stirred just beyond the trees. That's when I saw it, a glimmer of eyes watching from the wilderness, reflecting the moonlight like cold steel. "Get inside!" I shouted, fully opening the door, driven by instinct. He rushed past me, nearly tripping over his feet. I slammed the door shut, heart racing even faster as I threw the bolt into place. "What was that?" I whispered, barely able to keep the tremor from my voice. It felt like something dark loomed just beyond the walls of my sanctuary. But before he could answer, the lights flickered overhead. Then everything went dark once more. I stood there, frozen, the flashlight beam wavering as I struggled to grasp what had just happened. The cabin was thick with unease. The man was pacing, wiping sweat from his brow, eyes darting from the windows to the door. "What was outside?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. He leaned closer, desperation etched on his face. "You didn't see it?" he asked, his voice trembling. It was something, alive. It was hunting. My skin prickled. I fought the chill creeping up my spine. "What do you mean? What was it?" But he shook his head, hands tightening into fists. "I don't know. I didn't stop to look. I just ran." He glanced over his shoulder, and I could see the fear in his eyes. "Why were you out there? Are you running from something?" My heart pounded in my chest. I needed answers, but fear was clawing at my throat. They took my friends, he blurted out, voice cracking. I swear, we went camping, and I don't know what happened. They just vanished. A shiver ran through me as I thought of the stories I'd heard about the woods. The ones that spoke of people disappearing without a trace, lost forever. And you think that thing got them? He nodded, jaw clenched. I barely got away. It was right behind me. Before I could respond, the lights flickered again, barely illuminating the room. I could feel the weight of the darkness pressing against us, as if the cabin itself were paralyzed with fear. What if it follows you here? I asked, a knot tightening in my stomach. His eyes widened. It already has. Just then, a loud thud echoed against the door as if something had slammed into it. I jumped, my pulse racing. I turned to the door, heart pounding in my ears. What was that? I don't know. He shouted, backing away. But we have to do something. I scanned the room for a weapon, anything to defend myself. The hunting knife caught my eye, glinting in the faint light. I grabbed it, feeling a surge of determination. If I was going to survive this night, I needed to be ready. Then, more banging, insistent and terrifying. I moved to the door, trembling as I pressed my ear against it. There was a low growl, deep and unnatural, vibrating through the wood. It's out there, I breathed, fear gripping me once more. The man stepped beside me, glancing towards the window. We need to barricade the door. Before I could react, the cabin lights flickered again, momentarily blinding me. And in that flicker, I saw shadows creeping at the edges of the window, a writhing mass out in the dark. Someone's in the house, he said, voice breaking. I turned to face him, panic surging in my chest. What do you mean? But then, the lights went out again, plunging us into an oppressive darkness. I raised the flashlight, desperate to cut through the void, but when the beam landed on the window, I found only a pair of glowing eyes staring back at me. My breath hitched. The fear was palpable, wrapping around me like a vice. Then I heard a scratching sound, clawing at the walls. There was no escaping now. The scratching grew louder, like nails against a chalkboard. Every scrape sent shivers through me. I held the flashlight tighter, my knuckles turning white. I forced myself to breathe, to think. The man was shifting nervously beside me, glancing between the door and the window, clearly torn between fear and the instinct to act. We need to move, he said abruptly, eyes darting back to the shadows. If it's trying to get in, we can't just wait here. But where do we go? I countered, panic spiraling in my chest. There was nowhere safe, nowhere to hide. The idea of stepping out into the dark seemed worse than staying put. He pointed to a closet in the corner. There. We can squeeze inside and keep quiet. Maybe it won't find us. The rational part of my brain screamed at me to dismiss the idea, but the growing dread was too strong. I nodded, and together we backed away from the door and crept toward the closet. The growling outside had stopped, replaced by a heavy silence that felt even more ominous. As we ducked inside the cramped space, I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. I held my breath, straining to listen. Outside, the quiet seemed almost alive, as if the world was waiting for something to happen. The man was pressed close beside me, his warmth the only comfort in that dark, suffocating space. Then, an eerie, high-pitched sound broke the silence, a mix of a hiss and a growl. It curled around us, snug like a predator stalking its prey. My grip on the flashlight wavered. I barely dared to breathe, but instinct urged me to peek through the slats in the closet door. What I saw sent a lance of fear through me. A dark shape moved outside, a grotesque figure twisting among the shadows. Its form shifted fluidly, and I caught glimpses of long limbs, sharp claws, and a face that seemed to melt into the darkness. It sniffed the air as if it sensed our presence. I quickly looked back at the man, who was watching me with wide eyes. "What is that?" I whispered, terror making my voice tremble. "I don't know," he replied, swallowing hard. "But it knows we're in here." Just then, the flashlight flickered and went out. The darkness swallowed us whole, and for a moment, I could only hear our breathing quick and shallow. Then I felt it. A presence, heavy and wrong, moving closer, too close. I could hear something sniffing, like it was right outside the closet door. My instincts screamed at me to move, to run, but my body felt paralyzed. The scratching resumed, now focused on the closet, clawing at the wood with an intensity that made me flinch. I chanced another glance through the slats, and that was when I saw it, a glimmer of those same glowing eyes inches from my face, fixated on me. It leaned closer, and with a sudden jolt, the door creaked open just a crack. I gasped, and the man grabbed my arm, pulling me further back into the shadows. Before I could process what was happening, I remembered my knife. I fumbled for it in the dark, heart racing as the growling became a low, dreadful rumble. I had to defend myself. I had to fight. But then I heard a voice, a low, raspy whisper cutting through the chaos. "Don't struggle. Let it take you." That made me freeze. The voice was too familiar, sent chills down my spine. I felt a cold sweat break out on my skin as the figure outside began to push against the closet door. Who is that?" I stammered, my breath quickening. The man looked at me, panic, no, horror visible in his eyes. "I don't know," he whispered, trembling. "But we have to get out of here." I swallowed hard. "Then let's do it." With renewed determination, I took a breath, ready to face whatever was about to come through that door. But just as I was about to shove it open, a growl erupted, louder than before. It echoed like a death knell in the cramped space. Before I could process the sound, everything went black again. In the swirling darkness, a sense of finality set in. And all I could hear was the voice, chilling and close. "Submit." What were we about to face next? I felt disoriented, swallowed by the thick darkness when suddenly the weight of the door shifted. It wasn't being pushed open. Something was being pulled away, as if whatever was outside had taken a step back. I held my breath, praying for silence. Then a single sliver of light cut through the darkness, illuminating the closet just enough for me to see the man beside me. His eyes were filled with an unspeakable fear. "What do we do?" he whispered, barely able to form the words. Before I could answer, the flashlight flickered back to life, revealing the small space. Hearts racing, we leaned closer together. I raised my blade, ready to defend myself against whatever had just been in our midst. But the light drew a shadow across the floor, and I could see it now, something dark slithering away from us. "Did you see that?" I asked, looking urgently at the man. "It left?" "I don't know if it's gone," he replied, his voice shaky. Then the door swung wide open, throwing us violently into the light. The sudden brightness momentarily blinded me. Instinctively, I raised the knife, but the figure that had been before us was gone. Instead, a chilling echo remained, a whisper, threading through the air like smoke. "You shouldn't have come here." The man and I stumbled out of the closet and into the room, scanning every corner. The space felt alive with the memories of 100 whispers. The furniture was draped in white sheets, the windows boarded, an air of abandonment closing in on us. How could it just vanish? I muttered. My voice was weak, the fear tightening my throat. "What was that?" "Maybe it's playing with us," he suggested, kneading his hands, eyes darting. "Like a cat does with a mouse." I wanted to retort, to call him ridiculous, but the very idea made me shiver. I turned back to the door we had just escaped. My heart sank as I realized that something was off. Heavy scratches marred the wood, deep indentations that looked recent. "It was here," I said, trembling. "It was right here." As if in reply, the temperature dropped. My breath came out in frosty clouds. I felt the sensation of being watched settle over us once more. The air seemed to tremble, stirring with a chill that was undeniably hostile. "Let us find a way out," I said, my voice stronger now, yet still fragile. I pinched my knife tighter. I scanned our meager surroundings, spotting a window hidden behind a tattered curtain. "If we could just break that." Before I could finish my sentence, the voice returned, more insistent. "Don't run. You can't leave." Panic surged through me again, and I looked at the man, whose face was pale enough to blend with the sheets. "We don't have a choice. It's coming back." We raced to the window, desperation driving us as we rattled it open. The old wood resisted, creaking ominously. Behind us, a soft sound began to rise, a low thrumming, resonating through the walls, as if the house itself was coming alive. That's when I felt it again, that crawling sensation pressing against my skin. I turned just in time to see the shadow returning, rushing toward us. I could see its glistening eyes staring, hungry for fear. I pushed harder against the window. "Help me!" I yelled, but the man was frozen in place. The shadow grew closer, twisting and shifting, taking shape. We had to escape. But with every second, it felt as though the walls closed in tighter, willing us to face our predestined fate. As the creature lunged, everything shattered. And just like that, reality began to unravel. I blinked. The flicker of light faded, and I stood in the same room, but everything felt different. What had just happened? The walls felt closer, and the air was thick with tension. My heart raced, and I desperately looked around. The man beside me was gone. "Hello?" I called, my voice quivering in the emptiness. No answer came. Panic clawed at my chest. Where was he? Had he been taken? The shadows enveloped me, teasing at the edges of my vision. I turned in circles, trying to find some sign of life. Then I noticed it. At the far end of the room, a door I hadn't seen before creaked open, just a few inches. A faint glow seeped through the crack, beckoning me forward. I wasn't convinced it was safe, but staying here felt worse. What if the shadow returned? I took a small step toward the door, the wood groaning beneath my feet. "Please," I murmured, "not again." That whisper, "You shouldn't have come here," echoed in my mind like a warning bell. But I needed to know what lay beyond. I steadied my breath, gripping the knife tightly. I approached the door, peering through the narrow opening. The light grew brighter, and to my surprise, I saw the outline of the man. He stood among a circle of old, tarnished mirrors, their surfaces shining with reflective glimmers. I pushed the door wider. "Are you okay?" I whispered, hesitating at the threshold. He turned slowly, his eyes wide with disbelief. I think this place is a trap." "What do you mean?" I stepped closer, but he held up a hand, warning me to stop. "Look at the mirrors." I scanned the area and felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. In the depths of each mirror, shadows twisted and writhed, as if recreating the scene of fear we just escaped. I saw my reflection, no, not just my reflection. Behind me, the figure lingered, eyes like black pits, watching. "It's there," he stammered. "It's waiting." The air grew heavy. The whispers slithered around me, a cold breeze stirring the dust. I wanted to back away, to run, but my feet felt anchored to the floor. I couldn't turn my back on that thing. "Maybe we can use the mirrors," he suggested, desperation in his tone. "If it's trapped in there, we should find a way to use them." As his words settled in, I felt something shift. The air hummed with energy, like electricity was building in the atmosphere. It seemed as if the mirrors could somehow connect to whatever was haunting us. But how? Then I remembered the knife. What if we can trap it? I proposed. "Draw it in." Before he could respond, the shadows twisted violently. The creature's presence permeated the space, forming a dark mass that surged toward us. Instinct kicked in. I lifted the knife. "Keep it away!" I yelled. Just as the shadows lunged, everything went white. The mirrors shattered, and I was thrown backward, landing hard against the floor. But something was wrong. The air was gone, replaced by a suffocating silence. As I struggled to stand, the whispers grew louder, drowning everything out. "You cannot escape," they chorused, echoing off the walls. And that S when I saw it an absence where my reflection should be. In the glass fragments, I realized I wasn't just in danger, I had already lost a piece of myself. The realization sent a jolt of fear through me. The hunt wasn't over. I had to find a way out, or we'd be trapped here, forever part of the shadows. The silence rushed in, wrapping around me like a tight shroud as I fought to my feet. Panic surged within me, my heart thundered against my ribs, calling me to flee. I looked at the chaotic remnants of the shattered mirrors, twinkling like fallen stars, each splinter a reminder of what we'd faced. I hurled the blade toward the jagged glass, hoping for a distraction, hoping it would help me understand. But the creature wasn't gone. Its presence lingered, an oppressive force that crawled across my skin and knotted my insides. I could feel it, patient, waiting, wanting. I searched for the man. Where had he gone in this swirling nightmare? "Where are you?" I called, dread knotting my voice. As if in response, a low growl emanated from the darkness, vibrating through the ground beneath me. I spun around, and then I saw him. He was crouched in the corner, breathing heavily, trembling as he eyed a dark shape creeping towards us. I felt a jolt of recognition. I was not dealing with merely a creature or a ghost, but some manifestation of fear itself, an entity that thrived on our dread. Before I could reach him, shadows surged forward, and everything tightened around me. "Get back!" I yelled, trembling with uncertainty as I charged towards him, lunging to put myself between the approaching shape and the man. With every ounce of remaining fight, I shouted out, "No more games. We will not be taken." The voice, hungry and sinister, whispered back, "But you already are part of the story." The air grew heavy, thick with palpable tension, and I could feel my resolve crumbling. The dark shape flickered as if toying with us, shifting and morphing, hinting at how it had consumed the lost and the forgotten. In that moment, clarity struck me. I remembered the pendant, the strange circumstances surrounding the cabin, and the tales of those who had disappeared. The stories whispered of a dark consciousness that thrived on fear and despair. It twisted reality, blurred lines between choices and fate. That's why people had been drawn there, filling the woods with their own fears. Raising my voice, I tried to commandeer the chaos. "We may be afraid, but we're not lost. This is our story, and we will take it back." I stepped toward the dark figure. "You have no power over us unless we let you." As the shadows pulsed, I felt the energy shift, resisting as I stood my ground. The man joined me, emboldened by my defiance. "We're not submitting," he cried, louder than the whispers. But the shadows thickened, swirling around like a storm. I could feel their grip tighten on my mind, squeezing memories, conjuring regrets. But I pressed on, focusing on the fragments of bravery that had brought us here in the first place. "You are not real. You are just shadows of our fears. You cannot own us." There was a pause, as if the dark form was caught off guard. Then, the whispers escalated into a cacophony, old voices twisted in anguish, mixing with the rumble of the unseen beast. In that surge of noise, I felt something shift inside me. It was an intangible connection, perhaps a promise, that whatever darkness lingered would not dictate my fate. Suddenly, the shadows retreated, and in the flickering remnants of the broken mirrors, I saw myself again. Only now the reflection was clearer, more stabilizing, as though I was regaining pieces of my essence that had been scattered by fear. The man looked at me, realization dawning in his eyes as we joined in that reclamation. As the darkness refocused, I felt a surge of energy radiate from within, pushing back against the void. The shadows hissed, recoiling from the growing light we emanated. "This is our choice," we shouted together. With one united push, the vortex of darkness shattered before us, cracks splintering through the oppressive silence as it recoiled in defeat. The cabin was quiet once more. I gasped for air, the pressure lifting, as a soft light spilled into the room where shadow and fear had held sway. But as we took a step back, the flood of light revealed the remnants of what had just been a tapestry of memories sewn into the fabric of the cabin, unmade and unsolved. Questions lingered. What was real, and what had been conjured from shadows? What lives had been and gone? The man turned to me, eyes brimming with uncertainty. Did we win? He asked, his voice catching in his throat. Maybe, I said, though I too was unsure. But the stories remain. We stepped outside into the cold air filled with the scent of pine and something that felt like freedom. The snug space of the cabin, with its cloistering walls, felt insubstantial now, a reminder of the power of fear and the shadows it could cast. I think I'll be okay, he whispered, glancing back towards the cabin. But part of me knows this isn't over. I nodded. I can't help but wonder if I've really escaped or if it's simply waiting for the next moment of weakness. We walked away from the cabin, and as the woods enveloped us again, I felt the shadows linger behind both within and without. I knew they could be conjured again. I could still hear whispers, but now they were accompanied by a quiet acceptance of uncertainty, a reminder that while some questions linger, it's how we choose to face them that matters most. I moved forward, leaving the cabin behind, uncertain of what stood next but resolute that my story was still being written.